I got home earlier than usual and caught the sound of my wife talking on the phone. "I'm leaving him, Mom. I can't survive on his miserable teacher's paycheck any longer." She had no clue I was standing close enough to hear every word. She also didn't know that her supposedly broke husband was about to come into a $14 million inheritance. Sometimes karma shows up right on time. I'm Jake Lawrence. I'm 42, and I teach American history at Cedar Ridge High School in Austin, Texas. At least, that's the version of me most people think they know. The truth is, there's a lot more to the picture. But I'm getting ahead of myself. It all started unraveling on a Tuesday in March. I'd stayed late at school, buried in grading essays on the Civil War, trying as always to make teenagers see why knowing history actually matters for their futures. By the time I pulled into our driveway, the sun was sliding down, painting Maple Street in warm shades of orange and gold. Our two-story house wasn't anything fancy, but I thought of it as ours, emphasis on thought. The mortgage had both our names on it, though Ashley constantly complained it wasn't big enough for her vision. I walked up to the front door, balancing my work bag and a stack of essays. Through the kitchen window, I heard Ashley's voice. She was on the phone, probably with one of her influencer friends, chatting about her latest authentic living blog post or whatever fad was in this week. Fumbling with my keys, I dropped half the papers on the porch. As I bent to grab them, her words sliced through the evening air. "Mom, I'm divorcing him. I can't keep living on his pathetic teacher's salary. I'm 38. I deserve better than this mediocre life." Froze. Papers scattered around my feet like dry leaves. Dorothy Hayes, my mother-in-law, must have been on speaker, because I heard her reply loud and clear. "Oh honey, finally. I've been waiting for you to come to your senses. You've done your best, but you can't make a silk purse out of a sow's ear." Ashley laughed. Not nervously, but with genuine amusement. "I know, right? I've been mulling this over for months. Jake's a nice guy, I guess, but being nice doesn't pay for the lifestyle I want. Richard says I have so much potential, and he's right." That name, Richard, landed like a punch. Richard Blackstone, the restaurant owner who'd been liking all her Instagram posts. The one who sent her "just because" flowers last month. I stood on my own porch, listening to my wife and her mother dissect our marriage like they were sorting items for a yard sale. The papers in my hands suddenly felt heavier than paper had any right to be. Ashley kept talking. "My blog's starting to take off, and Richard's been nothing but supportive. He gets ambition, unlike some people." Dorothy added, "You know what they say, sweetheart. It's just as easy to fall in love with a rich man as a poor one." That's when I quietly slipped my key into the lock and pushed open the front door, closing it just loud enough to be heard. The conversation stopped instantly. I walked into the kitchen like it was any normal day, setting my bag on the counter the same way I had for the last 12 years. Ashley stood by the window, her phone nowhere in sight, pretending to scroll casually on her tablet. "Hey honey," she said without looking up. "How was school?" "Same as always," I replied, washing my hands. Tommy Peterson finally grasped the concept of cause and effect in history. Small victories. She hummed distractedly, not really listening, her eyes flicking toward the hallway like she expected someone else to appear. "Ashley," I said, drying my hands. "We need to talk." Her shoulders stiffened. "About what?" "About us. About where this is going." She finally met my eyes, and for a split second I caught something. Guilt, maybe, or the fear of being found out. But it was gone in an instant. "Jake, you're being dramatic," she said, smoothing her yoga pants. "Everything's fine. I'm just stressed with the blog and some business opportunities." Business opportunities. Maybe she meant Richard Blackstone. "What kind of opportunities?" "Yes." She waved a hand like it wasn't worth explaining. "Just some collaborations with local businesses. Nothing you'd be interested in." The way she said it stung, like my opinion didn't matter, like I couldn't possibly understand her big plans. "Try me," I said. She sighed, her perfected long-suffering sigh. "It's just networking, Jake. Building connections. You wouldn't get the influencer world. There it was again, that subtle dismissal. Maybe we should talk about our finances, I suggested. Plan for the future. Her face went pale for a second. Our finances are fine. No changes needed. But I could see it, she'd already made changes. Big ones. I love you, Ashley, I said quietly. Whatever this is, we can work through it. She looked at me then, really looked. And I saw something I'd never seen in her eyes before. Pity. I know you do, Jake, she said softly. I know you do. That night, she claimed a headache and went to bed early. I stayed in my office, staring at our wedding photo, remembering how certain we'd once been about our future. Then I opened my laptop and, for the first time, searched for divorce lawyers in Austin, just in case. The next morning, she was gone before I woke up. Her side of the bed was cold. A neatly written note sat on the kitchen counter. Gone to early yoga. We should talk tonight. I made coffee and stared at those 4 words. In 12 years of marriage, we should talk had never been good news. My phone buzzed with a text from Mike, my buddy who taught math down the hall. Poker night Friday. Same crew. I replied, count me in. Could use the distraction. I taught my classes, but my mind kept drifting. At lunch, I ended up in the guidance counselor's office with Sarah Mitchell, a good friend over the years. You look like someone ran over your dog, Sarah said, unwrapping her sandwich. What's going on? I told her about overhearing the phone call, leaving out Richard's name. She listened, her expression hardening. So, what are you going to do? I'm going to give her exactly what she wants, I said. Sarah raised an eyebrow. That doesn't sound like you. Maybe it's time to be someone else. That evening, Ashley came in carrying a shopping bag from some boutique I'd never heard of. More clothes for a life she was planning without me. Jake, about that talk, she began, placing the bag down. I know, I said, not looking up from my grading. You want a divorce. She froze. How did you? Doesn't matter. The question is, what do you want from me? She sat across from me, looking genuinely nervous for the first time in months. I don't want to hurt you, Jake. I need something different. Something more. More money, you mean? Her cheeks flushed. It's not just about money. It's about potential. About a real future. So what are your terms? I asked, setting my pen down. My terms. For the divorce. What do you want? The house, the car, my retirement account. She stared at me. You're not going to fight this. I held her gaze. Ashley, I'm 42. I'm not going to waste time begging someone to stay who's already halfway out the door. The next week felt surreal. Ashley moved through the house carefully, waiting for me to lash out, to beg, to explode. I didn't. I agreed to everything. She wanted the house, fine. She wanted the BMW, fine. When her lawyer, Brad Coleman, a guy whose hair probably cost more to maintain than my monthly grocery bill, sent over the preliminary papers, I signed without changing a thing. Mr. Lawrence, Brad said over the phone, I've got to say, this is unusual. Most men in your position would fight for something. Mr. Coleman, I replied, I believe in making things easy. What I didn't tell him was that I was already making my own moves, quietly, on a chessboard he couldn't see. The first step was during lunch break, a trip to the county clerk's office to legally take back my birth name, Jake Whitmore. I'd given it up when I married Ashley, at her suggestion, in what she'd called a progressive gesture. The clerk, a woman named Betty, looked puzzled. Changing back to your original name. That's not common for a married man. I'm getting divorced, I told her. Time to reclaim who I was. What Ashley didn't know was that my grandfather, Samuel Whitmore, had left strict instructions in his will. The family trust could only be claimed by blood relatives carrying the Whitmore name, and only once they were no longer legally tied to anyone outside the family line. I'd kept that to myself for 12 years, honoring my grandfather's wish to protect the family's legacy from fortune hunters and opportunists. Samuel Whitmore was a shrewd man who'd built his wealth during Texas's oil boom. He'd watched too many family fortunes crumble under the weight of greedy spouses. The next step was to call his longtime attorney, Daniel Rothschild, a man who'd been managing Whitmore business for 4 decades. "Jake, my boy," Daniel greeted when I got through. "I've been wondering when you'd call. Samuel always said you were the sharp one." "It's time, Mr. Rothschild," I told him. "The marriage is ending, and I'm taking back the name." "Understood. I'll start the trust activation right away." "You realize what this means for your cousin Tony?" I'd nearly forgotten about Tony Lawrence, my cousin who'd been trying for years to get his hands on the trust, arguing the name clause was outdated. "What's Tony been up to?" "Yes. More than just making noise. He's hired some aggressive lawyers, claiming the will discriminates. But now that you're back in the picture and legally eligible, his case collapses." Ashley had no clue that divorcing me would also shut her out of $14 million in oil rights, property, and investments. That reality was about to hit her. 2 weeks after filing the name change, I sat in Rothschild's oak-paneled downtown office, an old money space with leather chairs, Persian rugs, and portraits of stern-faced men who'd probably made their fortunes back when Texas was still untamed. "Jake," Daniel said, pouring 2 bourbons despite the early hour, "your grandfather would be proud. He always said you had the patience for the long game." I took the glass, feeling the history behind it. "Ashley has no idea what's coming," I said. "And neither does her new man, Richard Blackstone." I told Daniel about Richard, the Porsche-driving restaurateur with 4 high-end spots in Austin, who clearly thought my wife was his next acquisition. "She thinks she's trading up," I added. "Richard's been parading her around charity galas, introducing her to his wealthy circle." Daniel's chuckle was rough, like gravel rolling in a drum. $14 million in oil, property, and blue-chip stock. "I'd say you're the one moving up, my boy. What about Tony's legal play?" "Yes." Daniel's face turned serious. "He's using Patterson and Associates. Pricey but not exactly brilliant. They're arguing the name rule violates modern inheritance law. Problem is, Samuel's will is airtight. I wrote it myself back in '87. And as for the judge, well..." He leaned forward. "Rumor is Tony's been contributing to Judge Patricia Williams' campaign. She's the one hearing the case. Can she rule for him?" "She can try. But with you reinstated as a Whitmore and single after the divorce, the trust triggers automatically." I drained my bourbon and stood. "How long before the funds hit?" 48 hours after the decree is signed." "But Jake," his tone carried weight, "once this goes public, your life won't be the same. Are you ready for that?" I thought of Ashley's smug little smiles, her mother's jabs, the way she dismissed my career, and Richard's self-satisfied face showing up at school like he belonged there. "I've been ready for 12 years, Mr. Rothschild." Ashley filed for divorce on a Friday morning, probably thinking she'd ruin my weekend. I took the day off and went fishing at Lake Travis instead. Something about moving water helps a man think, and I had plenty to think about. Her texts came in all day. "All business. Sign the papers. Brad says this can wrap in 30 days. Thanks for being mature about it." Sure. If she only knew. That night, she suggested dinner for closure. She chose a trendy downtown spot where the plates were tiny and the bill was massive. Exactly the sort of place Richard probably favored. "Jake, this isn't personal," she began, neatly cutting her overpriced salmon. "We just want different things." I looked at her. New dress, jewelry I knew we couldn't afford, wearing that gentle bad news smile. "I get it," I said. "You want more than I can give." "Exactly." She brightened, as if I'd finally figured it out. "You're content with your teaching job, your small house, your simple life. There's nothing wrong with that, but I need stimulation, growth, excitement. Richard gives me that." "And what does Richard have to do with this?" she asked, pausing. "Come on, Ashley. The flowers, the expensive dinners, the wardrobe upgrade. You've been auditioning for a new life for months." She set her fork down. "Richard's a friend who understands my potential. He doesn't keep me small. So, you're swapping one husband for another." Her cheeks flushed. "I'm choosing someone who shares my vision for the future and can afford the life I deserve." I waved the waiter for the check. When it came, I handed over my card without even glancing. "Jake, you don't." "I insist," I said. "Call it my divorce gift to you." On the walk to our cars, she said, "I hope we can still be friends. I don't want you thinking badly of me." I looked at the woman I'd spent 12 years with, shared a bed, dreams, and quiet plans, and felt only pity. "Ashley," I said, "I don't think about you at all anymore." The flash of hurt across her face almost made those 12 years worth it. Almost. About a month later, my phone rang in my new East Side apartment, an affordable place Ashley would have despised. Brad Coleman's voice was already shaky before he even said hello. "Mr. Lawrence." Mr. Whitmore, we need to talk immediately. I just got a couriered letter from Rothschild and Associates. Something about a trust activation." I leaned back in my chair. "What does it say?" "It says you're sole beneficiary of the Whitmore Family Trust. $14.2 million in assets. Why didn't you disclose this during the divorce?" "You never asked." "We never asked." Brad's voice jumped an octave. "This is a $14 million inheritance. You were legally obligated to." "Actually, no. The trust didn't exist for me until the divorce was finalized." "Check the activation clause." I could hear him flipping pages, struggling with the legalese. "It says the trust is available only to unmarried male descendants with the Whitmore name. You took your wife's name when you married Anne. And I quietly changed it back 2 years ago. All official. Filed at the county clerk's." The silence that followed was golden. "Mr. Whitmore," Brad finally murmured, "your ex-wife is going to lose her mind." "That's not my problem anymore, Brad." After hanging up, I looked out over the Austin skyline. Somewhere, Ashley was likely having lunch with Richard, dreaming up their next chapter. Unaware she'd just walked away from enough money to buy his entire restaurant chain. A text buzzed in from Daniel. "Trust activation complete. Congratulations, Mr. Whitmore. Your grandfather would be proud." Then another from an unknown number. "This is Ashley. Brad told me about the trust. We need to talk. Please call me." I deleted it. 5 minutes later, "Jake, please. I didn't know. We can work this out." I shut off my phone and poured myself a proper scotch, the kind $14 million buys without hesitation. Outside, Austin carried on, oblivious to the fact a high school history teacher had just become one of the city's wealthiest men. The story hit the Austin Business Journal 3 days later. Local educator inherits multi-million-dollar family trust. Buried on page 4, but enough to set things in motion. By noon, 12 missed calls from unknown numbers. By nightfall, triple that. Reporters, financial advisors, distant relatives, and one particularly insistent caller from Tony Lawrence's legal team. The threatening call came at 10 p.m., just as I was grading papers in my new life as a secret millionaire. "Jake Whitmore," the voice rasped. "Who's asking?" "Someone who thinks you should reconsider your claim. Some people believe that money belongs elsewhere." "And what people are those?" "The kind who don't like family money being stolen on a technicality. Your cousin Tony has a valid claim. Tony can file all the paperwork he wants. The law's clear. Laws can be interpreted. Accidents happen to people who don't listen to reason." The line went dead. I stood there, letting it sink in, then called Daniel. "Jake, I was expecting you," he said. "Tony's desperate. His lawyers told him about the trust activation, and he's not handling it well." "How desperate?" "Desperate enough to hire private investigators to tail you. To lean on Judge Williams to speed up the case. And apparently desperate enough to issue threats." A chill crept over me. "What kind of threats?" "The kind that mean you need security. Jake, $14 million brings out the worst in people. Family included." The next morning, I found my car with slashed tires and a note under the wiper. "Next time it won't be your tires." By afternoon, I'd hired a bodyguard. Frank Thompson, a former Marine who looked like he could lift a truck, and moved into a secure high-rise with doormen, cameras, and no one getting in without questions. "Mr. Whitmore," Frank said as we walked my new penthouse, "you're up against people who see violence as a bargaining chip. Until this legal fight's over, you're a target." I stared out at Austin through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Somewhere out there, Ashley was just discovering her ex-husband now lived in a penthouse that cost more per month than most people made in a year. Somewhere else, Tony was plotting his next move in a game that was turning dangerous. The courtroom showdown went exactly how Daniel predicted. Judge Patricia Williams sat looking impartial while her campaign account fattened with Tony's donations. But money couldn't change math, and the law was painfully clear. The attorney waved his arms dramatically as he made his case. "This name clause is both discriminatory and antiquated. My client has lived his entire life as a Lawrence, and should be given the same chance as anyone else to inherit. This will set up an arbitrary obstacle that runs counter to modern standards of fairness." Daniel rose from his seat, his small 7-year-old stature still managing to command the room. "Your Honor, the will drafted by Samuel Whitmore in 1987 has been legally binding for 36 years. The plaintiff had plenty of time to legally revert to the family name if he wished. Moreover, this court has no authority to alter a valid will just because the requirements feel inconvenient to one party." Judge Williams leaned forward, clearly searching for some legal angle that could help Tony's side. "Mr. Rothschild, don't you think these terms are a bit outdated for today's world? Your Honor, the right of a testator to distribute assets according to their wishes is a core constitutional principle, provided those wishes do not conflict with constitutional law. Name conditions for inheritance have been repeatedly upheld by the Supreme Court, most recently in Henderson v. Morrison Estate in 2019. From my seat in the gallery, I watched Tony's face flush a deeper red with every passing moment as his lawyer's arguments fell apart like a collapsing house of cards. They had clearly assured him that Judge Williams would rule his way, likely counting on her willingness to twist the law in return for campaign support. But even corrupt judges have their limits when the statute is unambiguous. When she finally ruled in my favor, confirming both the will's validity and my rightful inheritance, Tony shot to his feet, glaring at me with venom in his eyes. "This isn't over, Jake," he shouted before the bailiff stepped in. "That money should be mine. You don't deserve it. Mr. Lawrence, control yourself in my courtroom," Judge Williams snapped. I could see in her expression that she was far from pleased about having to side against her own backer. Outside the courthouse, Daniel clapped a hand on my shoulder, his smile one of quiet victory. "Congratulations, Jake. Trust is now officially yours. Tony might appeal, but he's got nothing to stand on. Samuel's will is airtight." That evening my phone rang. Marcus Thompson's voice was urgent. "Mr. Whitmore, we've got a serious problem. Someone broke into your old apartment and trashed everything. They left something behind you'll want to see for yourself." Spray painted across my former bathroom mirror in large, dripping red letters were the words, "Dead men don't inherit money. Last warning." "That's it," I told Marcus firmly. "No more playing defense, it's time to end this." The next morning I called the FBI. Inheritance threats of this scale, especially when the sum exceeds $10 million, fall under federal jurisdiction. Agent Sarah Chan took my statement and immediately assigned a task force to dig into Tony's activities. Within 2 days, they had recordings of Tony discussing permanent solutions to his problem with known criminals. The FBI had already been monitoring his calls since his courthouse outburst. He was arrested for conspiracy to commit murder, witness intimidation, and solicitation of violence. As they led him away in cuffs on the courthouse steps, he turned and yelled, "You stole my birthright. That money was mine." "No, Tony," I said evenly. "I earned it, by honoring our grandfather's wishes and making better choices." The irony wasn't lost on me. Ashley had left because she saw me as too small, while my own cousin had tried to destroy me because I'd become too successful. Life has a strange sense of humor. 6 months later, I stood beneath the chandeliers of Austin's most prestigious hotel, hosting a charity gala for education funding. That night, we raised $2 million for Texas schools, and I personally added another $1 million from the Whitmore Foundation I'd established. The Austin American-Statesman published a front-page photo of me shaking hands with the mayor, the governor, and several tech billionaires who now treated me as an equal. The headline read, "Local educator becomes major philanthropist. Former teacher donates millions to Texas education." Naturally, Ashley saw it. Everyone in Austin did. Her friends sent her screenshots with comments like, "Isn't this your ex?" and "Wow, you really messed up." She tried calling me 17 times in 1 week, leaving increasingly desperate voicemails. When I finally answered, her voice was trembling. "Jake, I made the biggest mistake of my life. I didn't know about your family's wealth. If I had known about the trust." "If you had known," I interrupted calmly, "you wouldn't have shown me who you truly are. You did me a favor, Ashley. You proved your character when you thought I had nothing. Please, can we meet and talk? I know I hurt you, but we can work this out. You're with Richard now. Build the life you wanted with him." Her voice cracked. "Richard isn't who I thought. He's drowning in debt. His restaurants are leveraged to the hilt. He lied about everything. I've been living in a fantasy." I almost laughed at the poetic justice. "So now you want to come back because I have money?" "No, because I love you. I see now that I traded something real for something fake." "No, Ashley, you love what I have. That's not the same. If I were still in our old house, teaching full-time and driving my old Honda, you wouldn't be calling me." "That's not true." "It is, and we both know it." I hung up and blocked her number for good. Part of me pitied her. She'd thrown away genuine love and shared dreams for an illusion of wealth, only to learn that real fortune had been sitting across from her at dinner for 12 years. Richard Blackstone's restaurant empire collapsed half a year later. Debt-laden fine dining doesn't survive an economic downturn. Ashley set up a GoFundMe for basic living costs, claiming she'd been the victim of financial abuse and deception. I didn't donate, but I heard she moved back in with her mother, who now blamed her for throwing away the golden goose. These days, I still teach at Cedar Ridge High 3 days a week. Not because I need the paycheck, but because I love helping students realize they're capable of more than they believe. The rest of my time goes to running the Whitmore Foundation, now one of Texas's leading education charities. I live in a lakefront home on Lake Travis, drive a dependable car, and choose simple comforts because they bring me peace, not because I have no choice. Sometimes I think of Ashley and wonder if she ever learned from the fallout. Probably not. People like her usually just find new ways to repeat the same mistakes. But that's no longer my concern. I'm Jake Whitmore, heir to a $14 million legacy, and I sleep soundly knowing I honored my grandfather's vision. Sometimes the quiet ones truly do finish first. And once in a while, justice really does win.